Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sudah makan? MashaAllah. So, what was the makan? MashaAllah. Nasi lemak. Alhamdulillah. I hope you found it very interesting. Delicious? MashaAllah. Inshallah, this morning we'll be talking about the flip side. The flip side, one way I can explain it is to bring a little story about one brother I met here. You know, this brother, for so long, he wanted to slim down. He wanted to lose weight. You know, he wanted to become like me. And all the therapy he was trying didn't work. You know, and one day, maybe luckily or unluckily, he contracted the dengue fever. So when he had the dengue fever, in 6 days, he had lost so much weight. And, you know, some of his friends used to make a joke of him, saying that, okay, he tried all the therapy didn't work. You know, the only thing that worked was the mosquito therapy. You know. So and I was thinking, okay, maybe I will go to Nigeria also, maybe import some of these mosquitoes here to Nigeria for anybody that wanted to slim down also. But unfortunately, I was told that the dengue fever cannot be cured completely. It can only be suppressed. So I better don't take that to Nigeria. So, you know, before this brother contracted the dengue fever, he probably, you know, he tried everything, but it didn't work. So when he had the dengue fever, he might not be happy that, look, I don't like this. I mean, this is not the time for this fever to come. But what he had been looking for long, he couldn't get it except through the dengue fever. So he might not like the dengue fever, but eventually it did for him what he was looking for long. You know. So sometimes you don't like some things, but they end up becoming something good. You know. So that's what we mean by the flip side. You know. Turn every situation and every crisis you are facing, just look at the other side of it. How good is it? You know, so that you don't feel depressed. And these are some of the things we'll be looking at today. You know, the flip side. You may hate something, but now you can complete it. So, talked about the mosquito therapy. Now, there is one stories, you know, famous stories that scholars used to tell, some scholars used to tell, to teach people lessons. You know, about us not liking something, not wanting something, but that is useful for us. But we may not know, apparently, that it's useful for us until we have experienced a lot of things. There was this minister of Sulaiman alayhi salam. You know, he was together with him one day when Sulaiman alayhi salam had a visitor. So the visitor visited and, you know, they were talking. After they finished talking, as he was about going, he looked at the minister. You know, he stared at him for so long, and he went away. And the minister was so scared. Why is your visitor looking at me like that? And he told him, I don't know, please find out. And he sent somebody to this visitor to ask him, why were you looking at my minister for so long? Why did you stare at him? So and he said, it's surprising that this person, you know, actually before then, he'd gone away. He didn't have the opportunity to get the feedback back on time. So, they waited for some time, and the feedback came. But the feedback didn't go to Suleiman. It went to this other one, the minister. And he told him, this person was looking at you because he is the angel of death. And he came in form of human to see Suleiman alayhi salam. And he was saying that it is surprising that the place, in very short time is to take your life. I say, wow. So he went to meet Suleiman. This is what happened. Please, I don't want to be in the same country in which the angel of death is. So command the winds to take me far away from this country, this land. Suleiman said, okay, no problem. Where do you want? He said, this place. Okay. And he commanded the wind to carry him. And the wind carried him there. And the moment he was landing, he was meeting the angel of death. And that's how he took his life. And another time, the angel went to visit Suleiman alayhi salam. And Suleiman was asking him, after they finished their meeting, he was asking him, why were you looking at my minister the other time? And he said, yeah, it was surprising. This person, I was to take his life, but it was so far from the place I was to take his life. In a very few minutes, I was to take his life. But it was so far from the place. I couldn't disobey Allah by taking his life. Here, I had to be there before he had to be there before I take his life. And here is him here. So I'm surprised. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to do. So that's why I was just looking at him. You are putting me in complications. I can't take your life here. I had to take your life very far away. And maybe something like in 1 minute's time. And here you here in the other country is very far. He didn't want to disobey God. But this guy came and said, no, I don't want to stay in this country because he knew that the angel was here. I didn't want to stay in this place. I want to go somewhere else. And he decided. So that's why I will say, what you hate is not necessarily bad for you. And what you love is not necessarily good for you. So you always have to look at the flip side, the other side of whatever is happening to you. If you're in a crisis. So inshallah, what we'll be going through is to look at life as a journey of learning. Some of the trials we face in life, how can we learn from them? What can we learn from them? We look at what you hate may be a blessing also sometimes. It's not always negative. Live your life to the fullest. And we watch this video about this woman, Janine Shepherds, who was an athlete. And she had an accident. And she got paralyzed. She could no more participate in some of these sports. But, like other people, she was about getting depressed, but she braced herself up. Somebody that did not have legs, and she was able to fly aeroplane. How did she do it? So we watched the video, then turn scars into stars. We look at some people that have faced a lot of difficulties in their life, challenges, but they were also able to make things that were surprising in this world. So we look at that also, the scars that turned into stars. So we say something about this one, Stephen Hawking, and accept responsibility for your life. It was mentioned yesterday, just a summary of what was said. Then, if time permits, we watch another video, and we stop with this. Steve Jobs' Sanford speech. To start with, I would like to tell us a little story about Khidr and Musa alayhi salam. Just to let us know that sometimes things happen that we may not understand. But when you look at the deeper level, there is always a benefit for some crisis that happens in our life. Some difficulties that we face in our life. We should not see difficulties as problems, but we should see them as ways for us to develop better. Musa alayhi salam, when he met Khidr, he told him he wanted to learn from him. He wanted to be a student. But Khidr told him, you can be patient with me. And if you want to learn, you have to be patient. But you can be patient with me. He said, don't worry. I will try as much as possible to be patient. Okay. Then you can be my student. If you promise to be patient, you can be my student. You can follow me. But on one condition, that you don't ask any question until I am ready to tell you the reason for doing whatever I'm doing. He said, no problem. So, he set out on a journey. And the first experience Musa will have with Khidr was on a boat. They were on a boat, they wanted to go somewhere, and on the boat, Khidr decided to spoil some parts of the boat. And Musa was shocked. Why will you do that? You are spoiling the boat, you want to kill people? You want them to drown? And he said, didn't I tell you that you will not be patient with me? He said, oh, sorry, I'm very sorry. He apologized. He said, sorry for my forgetfulness. No problem. They continued again. As they were going, they got to a place where they saw a child, one young chap, and Khidr killed him. And Musa was like, why will you kill an innocent person? He didn't do anything. He had forgotten his promise that he will not ask questions. And Khidr reminded him, wait a minute. I have told you no question. And sorry, actually, I didn't say, wait a minute. I'm the one saying that. I've told you, don't ask a question. So sorry for my forgetfulness. If I ask question again, then that will be the parting point between you and I. No problem. So they got to a place again, in a town where they wanted people to give them food to eat. They didn't have food, and the people refused them hospitality. No problem. So as they were going within the same town, they saw a wall that was about falling. And Khidr decided to mend the wall, to repair it. And Musa was surprised, why will you do this, to these people that refused us hospitality? And Khidr said, I think it's time for you. You are not a patient student. I think it's time for you just to leave. But before you leave me, let me just tell you the reason why I did everything I did. Because Musa was seeing everything at the surface level. He wasn't going deeper. And Khidr told him, as for the boat, it belonged to two people that were in dire needs. They were so poor that was their only means of transport, of sustenance, their income. And there was a king where they were, the direction they were moving to. There was a king there who, hijacked every ship, every boat, every ship he saw. So because of that, he wanted to make this boat unserviceable, so that when the man sees it, he will not want to collect it, that this one is not worthy of hijacking. So that was the reason why he tried to spoil part of it, so that the people will still be the owner of the boats, and they can still continue get their income from it. That is the reason why he did that. Although you may not like it, but what comes out of it is something that was useful for the people. He said, as for the child that he killed, he didn't kill him intentionally, but that was the inspiration he got from God to do that. And he did that because the parents of the child were very good people. And the child probably was growing towards a direction of rebellion and ingratitude against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that he doesn't become ungrateful to Allah, before he starts becoming stubborn, before he starts becoming wayward. So he wanted to, he was inspired to take his life. So that at the end of the day, he becomes somebody that will enter Jannah. And he said, as for the wall that he tried to mend, that it was meant for 2 orphans. Their parents were good people, and they were rich. So they tried to put the wealth, to hide the wealth somewhere, under the place where the wall was falling. And if they didn't mend it, some other people will come, see it, and carry it away. So it was to protect, the future of these children that they were doing it. Forget about what other people are doing. If they are not good to you, it doesn't mean it should not be good to other people. So that was why he did that. Now, just to pick out some lessons from this, we will see that all these things, why will he kill somebody? Why will he destroy all these things? But when you look at the lessons, it was what he wanted out of it. Yeah, it's good, it's a bad experience, but when you look at the other side of it also, you see that there is benefit in it. So this is one of the lessons that the story of Musa and Khidr was trying to tell us, that every crisis we face, every difficulty we face in life is not necessarily something we should hate. Why? Because we learn from them. There are opportunities for us to learn. Trial is not impossible for us in life. If we are in this world, then we are bound to face a lot of trials. So we can't live in the world and say, no, we won't face trials. In one way or the others. The intensity, the degree of trials we are facing may be different, but there is no one that will not face his own trials. If you think you are happy, your happiness may be a trial for you. If you think you are sad, your sadness may be a trial, source of trials for you. So every trial, crisis, problems, or threat in life is an opportunity for us to grow. It's an opportunity for growth and consciousness. You learn from it, and you become more conscious. You learn different ways of doing different things in life because of the situation in which you find yourself. It's an opportunity for us to become better people in life. Because trials sometimes, makes people. It makes people. It makes you develop. You learn from experience. Everything you learn in the past, some of the difficulties you learned in the past, you experienced in the past, when you look at them back today, how do you feel? You have been able to overcome them. If somebody else has that problem, you tell him, no, this is how to do something. And when he asks you the question, why are you telling me this? You tell him, because I have the experience. How did the experience you have come about? It's because you have faced similar difficulties. So difficulties is what becomes later experience. crisis. It's how you're able to manage it sometimes. And we'll be looking at those. So it helps you become stronger individual, and to reach new level of awareness. There's this guy called Rafa Ali. Rafa Ali was a student of journalism. When he graduated, he sought for a job, but unfortunately, he couldn't get a job, for many years. And he didn't resign to his faith. He decided to keep on learning, to keep on growing. Why is it that when I apply for a job in these newspapers or newspaper organization, they don't accept me? So if he goes to a different place, they don't accept him. He tries to go and learn another skill again. Now maybe it's because he doesn't possess this skill. That's why he's not being employed. So every rejection was a new way, a new source of learning for him. So he will keep on going to learn. At a point in time, he said, okay, I will stop looking for a job. Let me just go straight into freelance journalism. I'm not working for anybody. I just request if anybody has, based on contract basis. He did that for some time, but it didn't work well for him. And he decided, okay, let me go and learn another skill. And maybe if I use this skill, I can use it to convince employers. And he decided to start blogging. And he started blogging. He had his website. And he wanted to, actually, he did that purposely to serve as his resume, virtual resume, so that whenever he goes somewhere, he will just tell them, look, this is what I have been able to do over a couple of years. And maybe that will boost, it will, raise his opportunities in front of his employees. So, as he was doing that, after about 2 years, he didn't stop. He continued doing that. And while he was doing that, he was also looking for a job somewhere. But no employment. And his bank account went 000, 2 times within those times. And he continued. He didn't stop. He was still working. But his website, which was called paidcontents.com, became, popular in some circles. And everybody, was talking about the website. And that's how one day somebody called him and said they wanted to advertise on his website. And that is how he became, he went to the next level. Now, when they were asking him questions about his journey, that what's one thing would you say is remarkable through this journey? And he said, the only thing he would like to say, he thanked God that he was not employed when he was looking for employment. Why? Because if he had been employed, he will not be able to think about this. He will not be able to go and learn new skills that will enable him to start the website. And he sold the website later to the Guardian's newspaper of UK at £4.1 million later. Just to start, just the website. And that's how much he sold it. Sometimes, people will look for a job. How many people look for a job and they don't get it and they feel frustrated? That's an opportunity for us. If you don't have a job, it's an opportunity for us to learn other skills, to keep on going, to keep on learning. That maybe it's not yet time. Prepare yourself for when you will get a job and you will be a better person. So you don't need to start learning new things when you are employed. So bring everything together. Make yourself valuable. Make yourself irresistible to employees. Sometimes also, we find ourselves in situations where we think, I wish I was in the UK. I mean, Malaysia is too dry, this and that, you know. You want to go to UK, you want to leave Nigeria, go somewhere else. I want to study in Harvard, in Stanford University, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes, it's not everything that you need to go far away to go and get. You know, there was this man. He had a farmland, you know, and you know, one day he was much interested in diamond. He wanted diamond. He wanted to become very rich. So, and there was a river, you know, by his farm. So he went one day, he saw, he was looking for diamond, but he didn't get diamond. You know, somebody else was able to see some, you know, small stone, and he was amazed. Wow, this is diamond. And he wanted to look for diamond. And he decided, you know, he looked around, he couldn't get, and he decided to leave the place. But before he left his farm, he sold it to somebody and leave the farm to some other place in order to find diamonds. He had already sold the place, and he went away. All his wealth, you know, all his wealth, squandered them in search of diamond. But the person he sold the diamonds, the lands to, one day just went fishing, and when he got there, instead of fish, you know, he just saw some small, you know, shining stones. And that's how he started digging the ground. He saw diamonds. And he discovered that the whole farm was like a farm of diamonds. You know, everything underneath, just have to dig. And this other one has left. He left his base, you know, of diamonds to go in search of diamonds somewhere else. You know, why he wasn't happy with where he was. You know, most of the time, similar things happen to us. No, I don't like this place. I'm not interested in this place. I want to go somewhere else. No, we don't have quality schools in Malaysia. It's in the UK, in Europe, you know. But when you look at it, many people from Nigeria come down here. They want to come and learn here. And by the time they go back to Nigeria, we look at them. He's from Malaysia. You know, everybody look up on him. Whenever you sit down, he sits down. You want to talk, the moment they say, okay, where are you from? Where did you study? I studied from one local university, mentions the university. And when they mention, where did you? I'm from one of the universities in Kuala Lumpur. Wow. And the other guy is like, oh. You know, he's afraid of talking again because somebody is from Kuala Lumpur. Yeah. So, but that doesn't mean that he can know, I mean, he knows better than you. So a lot of time, we have diamonds around us. But because we are not patient enough, you know, the same way Khidr will teach Musa alayhi salam, you just have to be patient. The diamond will come up. So we are so much in a hurry. We want to go somewhere else to go and learn, or we want to go somewhere else to go and work. I want to go overseas to go and work. No. And when we get there, we see that, oh, it's not as rosy as we were thinking. And we want to come back home, and a lot of things have changed. So, if you live each day as if it was your last, someday you will most certainly be right. If you live each day as if it was your last day, you know, one day is coming, it will actually be the last day. You know. But before it is the last day, you know, what have you to do? You know, is it only to complain about your situation? I'm very poor, I can't do this, I can't do that. You know, a lot of us have what they call the golden egg mentality. You know the goose that lays the golden egg? The story of the goose that lays the golden egg? You know, a farmer, he had a goose. You know. So one day he came and he saw the goose was laying a golden egg. Wow, this is great. You know. And one day, you know, so much golden egg. One day he just felt, you know, instead of waiting for this goose to lay the golden egg, why not just kill the goose, open the stomach, and bring out all the golden eggs? And he killed the goose, opened the stomach, the intestine, everything, and he couldn't find any golden eggs. And unfortunately, he couldn't bring it back to life again. You know, most of the time, you know, we are only interested in the end product. We are not interested in how do we get it. You know, many of our students, for example, they want to get good grade, but they don't want to study. You know, many of us, we want to have better future. No, many of us that are we want to have better future, but we don't want to save. No, we don't want to save. We don't want to invest. We want to enjoy our our goose now. No, instead of allowing the goose to lay a lot of golden eggs, you know, to continue feeding the goose in order to lay eggs. But we want to have everything, both the goose and the golden eggs at the same time. And we think it will continue like that. So it won't. We have to check. You know, we have to know what is our goose and what is our golden egg. So that we feed the goose, we take good care of the goose. If you're a student, you study very well, you read the latest books, you know, the latest studies. You meet with other people that know what you don't know. If you're a worker, how do you keep on improving yourself? So sometimes what we hate is not bad for us. No. And I will explain that with this story of a widow and a child. You know, this woman, she loved a child. And she always says, this is the only thing I have in life. And she didn't want the child to be far away from her. But this is a true life story. The child was a very brilliant child. And he got a scholarship to go and study in Europe. You know, this happened in the Middle East. To go and study in Europe. But the mother was like, wow, this child is going to leave me. No problem. They went to do the passports, got visas, everything. But on the day the child was supposed to leave for his studies, they searched for the passport of the child, but they couldn't find it. You know, they searched for it until, you know, for so long they were looking for it everywhere, they couldn't find it. And the child felt dejected, sad. And he went to sleep inside. And the mom went to the kitchen to cook for him. While she was cooking, the TV was on. You know, watching the TV, cooking. And there was a news of air crash. When she heard it, it was supposed to be the flight the boy was to catch. But when the mom saw it, she was so happy. And she went to bring out the passport. She was the one that hid the passport of the child. She intentionally hid it. She didn't want him to, you know, go away from her, you know, go for 4 years. And she didn't want him to be far away from her. So she went to bring out the passport. And they were searching for it together. You know, she was pretending to be, you know, to not be happy. And she took the passport. She wanted to go and wake the child up. And then, look, this is what happened. Come on, watch the news. Thank God you didn't go. And she woke him up, and he never woke up. You know, she woke the child up, and he never woke up. You know, so it was, you know, double tragedy. A double tragedy. You know, sometimes, you know, the mom was like, no, I didn't want him to be far away from me, you know, this and that. But why allow that? You know, I mean, the lesson here is sometimes don't say, okay, I am in possession of these things. I don't want to lose it. Don't allow possession to be your goal in life, to be your happiness in life. You remember authentic happiness? It's not possession that makes you happy. It's what you do in life. So this child, that's why Allah says our children, our wealth, everything, you know, they are like fitna for us. They are trials for us. You know. So she put all her happiness in the child. And she didn't want him to be far away from her. Now that he's passed away, so what will happen to you? You will live life of depression till you pass away also? No, it shouldn't be like that. You know. As for the child, you know, he wasn't happy, but there was opportunity. I mean, he missed the crash, even though he passed away. So sometimes we don't like something, you know. So trials are actually, you know, ways of making us stronger, you know, ways of strengthening us. We learn a lot. We may not like a lot of things that happen, but we can learn from them. I'll watch a video, and I like us to be very attentive and to ponder over what this video is going to teach us. Are we ready? Are we all ready? Yes. Okay. On your mark.
Put the lights.
Set. Go.
Life is about opportunities, creating them and embracing them. And for me, that was the Olympic dream. That's what defined me. That was my bliss. As a cross-country skier and member of the Australian ski team headed towards the Winter Olympics, I was on a training bike ride with my fellow teammates. As we made our way up towards the spectacular Blue Mountains west of Sydney, it was the perfect autumn day. Sunshine, the smell of eucalypt, and a dream. Life was good. We'd been on our bikes for around 5.5 hours when we got to the part of the ride that I loved, and that was the hills, because I loved the hills. And I got up off the seat of my bike and I started pumping my legs, and as I sucked in the cold mountain air, I could feel it burning my lungs, and I looked up to see the sun shining in my face. And then everything went black. Where was I? What was happening? My body was consumed by pain. I'd been hit by a speeding utility truck with only 10 minutes to go on the bike ride. I was airlifted from the scene of the accident by a rescue helicopter to a large spinal unit in Sydney. I had extensive and life-threatening injuries. I'd broken my neck and my back in 6 places. I broke 5 ribs on my left side. I broke my right arm. I broke my collarbone. I broke some bones in my feet. My whole right side was ripped open, filled with gravel. My head was cut open across the front, lifted back, exposing the skull underneath. I had head injuries, I had internal injuries, I had massive blood loss. In fact, I lost about 5 litres of blood, which is all someone my size would actually hold. By the time the helicopter arrived at Prince Henry Hospital in Sydney, my blood pressure was 40 over nothing. I was having a really bad day. For over 10 days, I drifted between 2 dimensions. I had an awareness of being in my body, but also being out of my body, somewhere else, watching from above, as if it was happening to someone else. Why would I want to go back to a body that was so broken? But this voice kept calling me. Come on, stay with me. No, it's too hard. Come on, this is our opportunity. No, that body is broken. It can no longer serve me. Come on, stay with me. We can do it. We can do it together. I was at a crossroads. I knew if I didn't return to my body, I'd have to leave this world forever. It was the fight of my life. After 10 days, I made the decision to return to my body, and the internal bleeding stopped. The next concern was whether I would walk again, because I was paralysed from the waist down. They said to my parents the neck break was a stable fracture, but the back was completely crushed. The vertebra at L1 was like you'd dropped a peanut, stepped on it, smashed it into thousands of pieces. They'd have to operate. They went in, they put me on a beanbag, they cut me, literally cut me in half. I have a scar that wraps around my entire body. They picked as much broken bone as they could that had lodged in my spinal cord. They took out two of my broken ribs and they rebuilt my back, L1, they rebuilt it. They took out another broken rib, they fused T12, L1 and L2 together. Then they stitched me up. They took an entire hour to stitch me up. I woke up in intensive care and the doctors were really excited that the operation had been a success, because at that stage I had a little bit of movement in one of my big toes. And I thought, great, because I'm going to the Olympics. I had no idea. It's the sort of thing that happens to someone else, not me, surely. But then the doctor came over to me and she said, Janine, the operation was a success and we picked as much bone out of your spinal cord as we could. But the damage is permanent. They're central nervous system nerves. There is no cure. You're what we call a partial paraplegic, and you will have all of the injuries that go along with that. You have no feeling from the waist down, and at most you might get 10 or 20% return. You'll have internal injuries for the rest of your life. You'll have to use a catheter for the rest of your life. And if you walk again, it will be with calipers and a walking frame. And then she said, Janine, you'll have to rethink everything you do in your life, because you're never going to be able to do the things you did before. I tried to grasp what she was saying. I was an athlete, that's all I knew, that's all I'd done. If I couldn't do that, then what could I do? And the question I asked myself is, if I couldn't do that, then who was I? They moved me from intensive care to acute spinal. I was lying on a thin, hard spinal bed. I had no movement in my legs. I had tight stockings on to protect from blood clots. I had one arm in plaster, one arm tied down by drips. I had a neck brace and sandbags on either side of my head. And I saw my world through a mirror that was suspended above my head. I shared the ward with 5 other people. And the amazing thing is that because we were all lying paralysed in the spinal ward, we didn't know what each other looked like. How amazing is that? How often in life do you get to make friendships, judgment-free, purely based on spirit? And there were no superficial conversations as we shared our innermost thoughts, our fears, and our hopes for life after the spinal ward. I remember one night, one of the nurses came in, Jonathan, with a whole lot of plastic straws. He put a pile on top of each of us and he said, start threading them together. Well, there wasn't much else to do in the spinal ward, so we did. And when we'd finished, he went around silently and he joined all of the straws up till it looped around the whole ward. And then he said, okay, everybody, hold on to your straws. And we did. And he said, right, now we're all connected. And as we held on and we breathed as one, we knew we weren't on this journey alone. And even lying paralysed in the spinal ward, there were moments of incredible depth and richness, of authenticity and connection that I had never experienced before. And each of us knew that when we left the spinal ward, we would never be the same. After 6 months, it was time to go home. I remember Dad pushing me outside in my wheelchair wrapped in a plaster body cast, and feeling the sun on my face for the first time. I soaked it up and I thought, how could I ever have taken this for granted? I felt so incredibly grateful for my life. But before I left hospital, the head nurse had said to me, Janine, I want you to be ready because when you get home, something's going to happen. And I said, what? And she said, you're going to get depressed. And I said, not me, not Janine the Machine, which was my nickname. She said, you are, because see, it happens to everyone. In the spinal ward, that's normal. You're in a wheelchair, that's normal, but you're going to get home and realise how different life is. And I got home and something happened. I realised Sister Sam was right. I did get depressed. I was in my wheelchair. I had no feeling from the waist down, attached to a catheter bottle. I couldn't walk. I'd lost so much weight in hospital, I now weighed about 80 pounds. And I wanted to give up. All I wanted to do was put my running shoes on and run out the door. I wanted my old life back. I wanted my body back. And I can remember Mum sitting on the end of my bed and saying, I wonder if life will ever be good again. And I thought, how could it? Because I've lost everything that I valued, everything that I'd worked towards, gone. And the question I asked was, why me? Why me? And then I remembered my friends that were still in the spinal ward, particularly Maria. Maria was in a car accident and she woke up on her 16th birthday to the news that she was a complete quadriplegic. Had no movement from the neck down, had damage to her vocal cords and she couldn't talk. They told me, we're going to move you next to her because we think it will be good for her. I was worried. I didn't know how I'd react being next to her. I knew it would be challenging, but it was actually a blessing because Maria always smiled. She was always happy, and even when she began to talk again, albeit difficult to understand, she never complained, not once. And I wondered how had she ever found that level of acceptance. And I realised that this wasn't just my life, it was life itself. I realised that this wasn't just my pain, it was everybody's pain. And then I knew, just like before, that I had a choice. I could keep fighting this, or I could let go and accept not only my body, but the circumstances of my life. And then I stopped asking, why me? And I started to ask, why not me? And then I thought to myself, maybe being at rock bottom is actually the perfect place to start. I had never before thought of myself as a creative person. I was an athlete, my body was a machine. But now, I was about to embark on the most creative project that any of us could ever do, that of rebuilding a life. And even though I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do, in that uncertainty came a sense of freedom. I was no longer tied to a set path. I was free to explore life's infinite possibilities. And that realization was about to change my life. Sitting at home in my wheelchair and my plaster body cast, an aeroplane flew overhead. And I looked up and I thought to myself, that's it! If I can't walk, then I might as well fly. I said, Mum, I'm going to learn how to fly. She said, that's nice, dear. I said, pass me the yellow pages. She passed me the phone book. I rang up the flying school. I made a booking, said I'd like to make a booking to come out for a flight. They said, when do you want to come out? I said, well, I have to get a friend to drive me out because I can't drive. Sort of can't walk either. Is that a problem? I made a booking, and weeks later my friend Chris and my mum drove me out to the airport, all 80 pounds of me covered in a plaster body cast in a baggy pair of overalls. I can tell you, I did not look like the ideal candidate to get a pilot's license. I'm holding onto the counter because I can't stand. I said, hi, I'm here for a flying lesson. And they took one look and ran out the back to draw short straws. You get her. No, you take her. Finally, this guy comes out, he goes, hi, I'm Andrew, and I'm going to take you flying. I go, great. So they drive me down, they get me out on the tarmac, and there was this red, white, and blue aeroplane. It was beautiful. They lifted me into the cockpit. They had to slide me up on the wing, put me in the cockpit. They sat me down. There are buttons and dials everywhere. I'm going, wow, how do you ever know what all these buttons and dials do? Andrew, the instructor, got in the front, started the aeroplane up. He said, would you like to have a go at taxiing? That's when you use your feet to control the rudder pedals, to control the aeroplane on the ground. I said, no, I can't use my legs. He went, oh. I said, but I can use my hands. And he said, okay. So he got over to the runway and he applied the power. And as we took off down the runway and the wheels lifted up off the tarmac and we became airborne, I had the most incredible sense of freedom. And Andrew said to me, as we got over the training area, you see that mountain over there? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, you take the controls and you fly towards that mountain. And as I looked up, I realized that he was pointing towards the Blue Mountains, where the journey had begun. And I took the controls, and I was flying. And I was a long, long way from that spinal ward. And I knew right then that I was going to be a pilot. Didn't know how on earth I'd ever pass a medical. But I'll worry about that later, because right now I had a dream. So I went home, I got a training diary out, and I had a plan. And I practiced my walking as much as I could. And I went from the point of like 2 people holding me up to 1 person holding me up, to the point where I could walk around the furniture as long as it wasn't too far apart. And then I made great progression to the point where I could walk around the house holding onto the walls like this. And Mum said she was forever following me, wiping off my fingerprints. But at least she always knew where I was. So while the doctors continued to operate and put my body back together again, I went on with my theory study. And then eventually and amazingly, I passed my pilot's medical, and that was my green light to fly. And I spent every moment I could out of that flying school, way out of my comfort zone. All these young guys that wanted to be Qantas pilots, you know, and little old hop-along me, in first my plaster cast and then my steel brace, my baggy overalls, my bag of medication and catheters, and my limp. And they used to look at me and think, oh, who is she kidding? She's never going to be able to do this. And sometimes I thought that too. But that didn't matter, because now there was something inside that burned that far outweighed my injuries. And little goals kept me going along the way. And eventually I got my private pilot's license. And then I learned to navigate. And I flew my friends around Australia. And then I learned to fly an aeroplane with 2 engines. And I got my twin engine rating. And then I learned to fly in bad weather as well as fine weather and got my instrument rating. And then I got my commercial pilot's license. And then I got my instructor rating. And then I found myself back at that same school where I'd gone for that very first flight, teaching other people how to fly. Just under 18 months after I'd left the spinal ward. And then I thought, why stop there? Why not learn to fly upside down? And I did. And I learned to fly upside down and became an aerobatics flying instructor. And Mum and Dad, never been up. But then I knew for certain that although my body might be limited, it was my spirit that was unstoppable. The philosopher Lao Tzu once said, when you let go of what you are, you become what you might be. I now know that it wasn't until I let go of who I thought I was that I was able to create a completely new life. It wasn't until I let go of the life I thought I should have that I was able to embrace the life that was waiting for me. I now know that my real strength never came from my body. And although my physical capabilities have changed dramatically. Who I am is unchanged. The pilot light inside of me was still a light, just as it is in each and every one of us. I know that I'm not my body, and I also know that you're not yours. And then it no longer matters what you look like, where you come from, or what you do for a living. All that matters is that we continue to fan the flame of humanity by living our lives as the ultimate creative expression of who we really are. Because we are all connected by millions and millions of straws. And it's time to join those up and to hang on. And if we are to move towards our collective bliss, it's time we shed our focus on the physical and instead embrace the virtues of the heart. So raise your straws if you'll join me. Thank you. Thank you.
Are we ready to let go of who we are? To become who we might be. Before we continue, I'd like to ask, what lessons did we learn from this video? Anybody to share ideas?
Always have hope.
What were your feelings? What did you feel? Always have hope.
Don't give up.
Don't be?
Don't give up.
Don't give up. Yes?
Change is good.
Change is good. MashaAllah.
Always be positive.
Always be positive. So no matter what, no matter the situation in which you find yourself, positive or negative, easy or difficult, never think your present stage should be the present stage. Think beyond the future. When you have a child, he's a child, his wishes are different from when he becomes a youth. A child, 10 years, always want, what does he want? Toys. But when he becomes 20, is he still wanting toys? He wants different things. So don't limit yourself to this present stage, the stage in which you are. You may be thinking, okay, this is what I need now. Yes, but that's not the only thing you need. That's because you are finding yourself in a particular situation. When you get in another situation, you may need something else. So don't always think that what you need, what you want now is the only thing you want. That's because that's the only situation in which you find yourself. Sometimes you are finding, you're in a difficult situation, and you think, no, I have a problem, I can't do this, you give up all hope. But you don't do that. And that's why I like this quote of ours. It is time we shed off focus on the physical and instead embrace the virtues of the heart. What does your heart tell you? Don't let poverty be a conditioning factor in your life. Don't let riches also be a conditioning factor in your life. Don't let the lack of enough academic trainings be a conditioning factor for you. You can always go beyond what you are thinking. You don't need certificates to be most knowledgeable. To be knowledgeable in whatever you want. So don't let anything be obstacles in your way, difficulties. And we saw what happened to her. Somebody that couldn't walk ended up flying. And not just flying, but flying acrobatically also. So live your life in an acrobatic life also. Whatever does not kill us, make us stronger. If something is not any difficulty that is not going to kill you, then it makes you stronger. Never give up. Now, some of the best music was composed by this guy. And what was his problem? He was deaf. But the fact that he was deaf did not stop him, to compose one of the best music in the world. Some of the best poets were written on nature was written by Milton. Somebody is writing about nature. And you know his problem? He was blind. So his negative condition was not a problem to him. This is what he wants, and he tried to reach out for it. And one of the greatest world leaders was the US President Franklin Roosevelt. And what was his handicap? He was on wheelchairs throughout his life. So these are people that do not take the physical body, as the ultimate things in life. It's what is in their hearts. They always try to reach for what is in their hearts. So you can also reach for what is in your heart. What do you want out of life? What do you want to do? And try to go for it, no matter your condition. No matter the situation in which you are finding yourself, you can always be better. This guy, sorry for the Stephen Hawking, he had a disease. They call it the motor neuron disease. He's paralyzed. But he's one of the best scientists, the best world celebrated scientists in the world, cosmic scientists. He said, but it taught me not to pity myself because others were worse off and to get on with what I could do. I am happier now than before I developed the condition. Maybe if he didn't have if he didn't have the disease, he wouldn't have been able to reach the level he reached. So every situation in which we find, every difficulty, every crisis, always look at the flip side. Always look at the other side. What are the benefits from it? But unfortunately, as humans, we always look at the negative side of what is happening to us. And we forget the positive side. And because we concentrate too much on the negative side, we can't move forward. I'd like us to take a few minutes to think over our past experiences also. And to share, some of our flip side stories with us. A few minutes, think over. In your life, what are the things that happen that you will consider as flip side, that people can learn from? So I'd like to give us 3 minutes for that. Inshallah, we'll share our ideas. Anybody wanting to share their own flip side idea? Stories? Any volunteer? What crisis will you say happened in your life? Or what difficulty will you say you had but made you stronger later on in the year? You don't want people to learn from you? No.
This thing happened like 2 years back. I never go out from Malaysia. Actually, I never go out from Peninsula Malaysia. That's how very, untraveled myself is. Then I got the opportunity to continue my studies in London, United Kingdom. I know nobody. I have no connection. What so happened is that I only know a friend of another friend who's supposed to pick me up at the airport. Being alone, right from Malaysia, straight away to London. I reached Heathrow around 11 o'clock at night. To make things worse is that it's actually the end of the week after London Orientate. So London is very rich at that time. I don't know why. I have the idea of I can do this, but I never know how far I can do things. When I reached Heathrow at that time is before, due to the delay in Dubai, I arrived nearly to 12, and apparently there is no train. and my handphone somehow cannot work. I don't know why. I keep asking, like Janine just now, why this thing happened? Because the story before I managed to go to London, there's a lot of things happen. I sold everything that I have in order to go to London. Then I say, I've gone through a lot. Why do I need to face this thing again? So worst thing can happen, being small, this size, with a very big bag. I ask myself, I am in the middle of nowhere, knowing nobody. How can I survive? Then what I can remember is that I just tell myself, take it as an opportunity to see how far you can go. Because you never know your capability until you don't have any more option. Because if you have option, you will just, oh, I have this A. If plan A is not working out, I can go to B, or I can go to C. But right now, at that particular moment, I don't have any. The only thing is that I just go whatever it is. To cut things short, amazingly, with the address that I have, knowing nobody nowhere, only have like less than £100 right now. I managed to arrive at the door of the address with the help of some Samaritans by asking. Being in London in the middle of the night, yeah, I reach is actually weekend nights, and if you guys have the opportunity to go to other countries, there's a lot of brown people. Being a woman in hijab is a scary experience. And how do I? Being alone, I have know that as long as you know that you got Allah with you and you have a very deep tawakkul, everything will be fine. Even though things are very bad, things will work out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jazakumullahu khair. I mean, one important thing she said, I mean, when you have choice, you will always be hesitating. You won't know your own strengths because you have choice. You know, you have choices. I can do this, I can do that. And you always want to go for the easiest one. So you will never know your own value. You know, if not for fire, you will not know the value of diamond and gold. You know, if the average life expectancy of a person is 75 years, and if, say for example, you are 40 years old, so you have about 365 days times 35 years to live. Ask yourself this question: what are you going to do with this time? You remain part of your life. When we accept or add responsibility, we make ourselves more valuable. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ إِعْمَلُوا فَسَيَرَى اللَّهُ عَمَلَكُمْ وَرَسُولُ وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Do your work. Forget about all the trials you are having. What do you want out of life? What do you want to achieve in this world? And just go for it. Forget about all the obstacles. Just go for it. Make sure, go. Because Allah is saying you don't have any complaint. Allah has given us the power, to have control over the oceans, over mountains, earthquake. We know how to deal with them. All these, amazing, monumental things in this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us strength, the power to overcome them. So there is no difficulty that man can overcome. That's why he says, "La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha." He doesn't give us a burden that we cannot carry. So whatever the situation in which you are finding yourself, you always can put more effort, to overcome the negative aspect of the situation. Always look at the positive side, of anything that is happening to you. The Quran says, or do you think that you shall enter the garden of bliss? No. Such trials as came to those who, without passing through such trials as came to those who passed away before you. They encountered suffering and adversity and were so shaken in spirit that even the messenger and those of faith who were with him were crying, Mata Nasrullah. When will Allah's help come? Allah inna Nasrullahi qareeb. But the help of Allah is very near. We just need to do a little effort. Sometimes it's our effort Allah's help is in the little effort we make. If you don't study, you won't know. You just have to go and study. When you are learning, Allah will make it easy for you to understand. If you want to have a better future, better financial, economic future in future, yours is just to save. Allah's help is in you saving. You don't squander all your money. Every month you earn your salary and you squander it anyhow you want. And when you are reaching a retirement age and you are saying, I wish God has given me much. No, He has given you much. It's just that you squandered it. You didn't plan your life. His help is in whatever you have now. How do you use it? Determines how His help will come. Sometimes you may hate something. That's what the Quran says. But it doesn't mean that it's not good for you. Then you may love something, and it doesn't mean that it is good for you. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, when it comes to relationship also, that Habibaka hawnaman, love whomever you love moderately. Why? Asa an yakuna baghidaka yawmaman, because he may become the person you hate most one day. Wa abghid baghidaka hawnaman, and whoever you hate most, hate him moderately. Asa an yakuna habibaka yawmaman, because he may become the person you love most one day. No, I can't do without him. Yes, you can do without him. By the time is coming, you will say, no, you can do without him. No. So we have to be very, very careful. This is the last slide, and this is where I'd like to stop. Inshallah, I have no comment on here, but I don't know how much time do I have. This is about 15 minutes. 15 minutes? Okay. So this is another video, and you pick out the lessons from it, and he says what I want to say. And he says it even better.
This program is brought to you by Stanford University. Please visit us at stanford.edu.
Thank you. I'm honored to be with you today for your commencement from one of the finest universities in the world. Truth be told, I never graduated from college, and this is the closest I've ever gotten to a college graduation. Today, I want to tell you 3 stories from my life. That's it. No big deal. Just 3 stories. The first story is about connecting the dots. I dropped out of Reed College after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months or so before I really quit. So why did I drop out? It started before I was born. My biological mother was a young, unwed graduate student, and she decided to put me up for adoption. She felt very strongly that I should be adopted by college graduates, so everything was all set for me to be adopted at birth by a lawyer and his wife. Except that when I popped out, they decided at the last minute that they really wanted a girl. So my parents, who were on a waiting list, got a call in the middle of the night asking, "We've got an unexpected baby boy. Do you want him?" They said, of course. My biological mother found out later that my mother had never graduated from college and that my father had never graduated from high school. She refused to sign the final adoption papers. She only relented a few months later when my parents promised that I would go to college. This was the start of my life. And 17 years later, I did go to college. But I naively chose a college that was almost as expensive as Stanford. And all of my working class parents' savings were being spent on my college tuition. After 6 months, I couldn't see the value in it. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. And here I was, spending all of the money my parents had saved their entire life. So I decided to drop out and trust that it would all work out okay. It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The minute I dropped out, I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked far more interesting. It wasn't all romantic. I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposits to buy food with. And I would walk the 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. I loved it. And much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Let me give you one example. Reed College at that time offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Throughout the campus, every poster, every label on every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphed. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal classes, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying the amount of space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture, and I found it fascinating. None of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me. And we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. If I had never dropped out, I would have never dropped in on that calligraphy class, and personal computers might not have the wonderful typography that they do. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference. My second story is about love and loss. I was lucky. I found what I loved to do early in life. Woz and I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20. We worked hard, and in 10 years, Apple had grown from just the two of us in a garage into a $2 billion company with over 4,000 employees. We just released our finest creation, the Macintosh, a year earlier, and I just turned 30. And then I got fired. How can you get fired from a company you started? Well, as Apple grew, we hired someone who I thought was very talented to run the company with me. And for the first year or so, things went well. But then our visions of the future began to diverge, and eventually we had a falling out. When we did, our board of directors sided with him. And so at 30, I was out, and very publicly out. What had been the focus of my entire adult life was gone, and it was devastating. I really didn't know what to do for a few months. I felt that I had let the previous generation of entrepreneurs down, that I had dropped the baton as it was being passed to me. I met with David Packard and Bob Noyce and tried to apologize for screwing up so badly. I was a very public failure, and I even thought about running away from the valley. But something slowly began to dawn on me. I still loved what I did. The turn of events at Apple had not changed that one bit. I'd been rejected, but I was still in love. And so I decided to start over. I didn't see it then, but it turned out that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again, less sure about everything. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. During the next 5 years, I started a company named Next, another company named Pixar, and fell in love with an amazing woman who would become my wife. Pixar went on to create the world's first computer animated feature film, Toy Story, and is now the most successful animation studio in the world. In a remarkable turn of events, Apple bought Next, and I returned to Apple, and the technology we developed at Next is at the heart of Apple's current renaissance. And Lorene and I have a wonderful family together. I'm pretty sure none of this would have happened if I hadn't been fired from Apple. It was awful tasting medicine, but I guess the patient needed it. Sometimes life's going to hit you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith. I'm convinced that the only thing that kept me going was that I loved what I did. You've got to find what you love. And that is as true for work as it is for your lovers. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life. And the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking and don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. And like any great relationship, it just gets better and better as the years roll on. So keep looking, don't settle. My third story is about death. When I was 17, I read a quote that went something like, "If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." It made an impression on me, and since then, for the past 33 years, I've looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. About a year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. I had a scan at 7:30 in the morning, and it clearly showed a tumor on my pancreas. I didn't even know what a pancreas was. The doctors told me this was almost certainly a type of cancer that is incurable, and that I should expect to live no longer than 3 to 6 months. My doctor advised me to go home and get my affairs in order, which is doctor's code for prepare to die. It means to try and tell your kids everything. You thought you'd have the next 10 years to tell them in just a few months. It means to make sure everything is buttoned up so that it will be as easy as possible for your family. It means to say your goodbyes. I lived with that diagnosis all day. Later that evening, I had a biopsy where they stuck an endoscope down my throat, through my stomach and into my intestines, put a needle into my pancreas and got a few cells from the tumor. I was sedated, but my wife, who was there, told me that when they viewed the cells under a microscope, the doctors started crying because it turned out to be a very rare form of pancreatic cancer that is curable with surgery. I had the surgery, and thankfully, I'm fine now. This was the closest I've been to facing death, and I hope it's the closest I get for a few more decades. Having lived through it, I can now say this to you with a bit more certainty than when death was a useful but purely intellectual concept. No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet, death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it. And that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It's life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Right now, the new is you. But someday, not too long from now, you will gradually become the old and be cleared away. Sorry to be so dramatic, but it's quite true. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. When I was young, there was an amazing publication called the Whole Earth Catalog, which was one of the Bibles of my generation. It was created by a fellow named Stuart Brand, not far from here in Menlo Park, and he brought it to life with his poetic touch. This was in the late 60s, before personal computers and desktop publishing, so it was all made with typewriters, scissors, and Polaroid cameras. It was sort of like Google in paperback form 35 years before Google came along. It was idealistic, overflowing with neat tools and great notions. Stuart and his team put out several issues of the Whole Earth Catalog, and then, when it had run its course, they put out a final issue. It was the mid-1970s, and I was your age. On the back cover of their final issue was a photograph of an early morning country road, the kind you might find yourself hitchhiking on if you were so adventurous. Beneath it were the words, "Stay hungry, stay foolish." It was their farewell message as they signed off. Stay hungry, stay foolish. And I've always wished that for myself. And now, as you graduate to begin anew, I wish that for you. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Thank you all very much.